Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am good. I am good. I've been
It's
wanting
good to
to
see you.
have you. Yeah, good to see you. I've been wanting to have you as a guest for the Jewish Women Entrepreneurs podcast for a long time. And actually, I'm happy that we waited because I feel like now you have you had interesting news all along, but I feel like now it's becoming, there's a momentum that we're going to talk about with everything amazing that you're doing. But I'm going to first start
Mhm.
with reading your bio so that anyone who doesn't know you yet will know who is Tali Eliani. So Tali was born in the UK. She lived for some years in Israel, and now she lives in Venice, Italy, with her husband and their three children. Recognizing that the level of Hebrew and Judaic studies education that she wanted for her children was simply unavailable in Venice, Kylie believed that the technology tools that she used in her day job as a successful marketing consultant could be used to harness the educational needs of her children. And from this vision, Zehud was born. Today, Kylie is the chairwoman of the board of Zehud, and Zehud is a not-for-profit online supplementary school for Jewish children in Europe, whose purpose is to give children the knowledge and skills to live as proud Jews as well as feel a connection to Israel. I love this project. I love it. I mean, from the first time I heard you, I remember when we first met, I was like, wow, this is an amazing project. But when I'm reading this bio, I want you to take us back to this time where you're with your kids, you're looking for a solution for them to speak Hebrew, to learn about Judaic studies. You don't have any solution. And I want you to take us back to that moment where you say, okay, I'm just going to do it myself. I want to go back to that moment where you shift from there's no solution to I have to do something about it. Can you take us there?
I'm not really good at no solution. Like that doesn't really work for me. I have to be honest. I don't want to sound proud because I'm really not. But and I don't want to insult my countrymen, but my expat friends often say that Italians have a can't do attitude, a cannot
Okay.
do attitude.
Right.
And so I am often surrounded with people that say to me, it just can't be done. It just, um, and that there's always a way, I think. And it took me a while to work it out, but I knew there was a way. So, so many sleepless nights and a bit
Yeah.
of worrying about, what the future of my kids' education was going to look like. What it meant for their future didn't help at all because obviously that's a bit of pressure. But I'm not very good with can't be done. There's
Right.
always a way, more or less. You just have to work it out.
Right. But tell me, like before the school, Zehud school existed, what would people do? Like, what did you do with your kids? What other people, the Jewish, Jewish families in Italy or in Venice, more specifically around you, how did you decide to solve this option before Zehud school existed?
So there are options, but they weren't options that I considered good enough
Okay.
because the majority of European communities today are what are called small and medium communities that don't have a Jewish school. And a lot of those communities have a Sunday program, but children can go eight years through the Sunday program and not have any literacy at all. They have beautiful programming, wonderful experiences, but not literacy.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, I realized very early on, being where I am, that language was a skill. And it was a skill. Just today, I learned about an educational benchmark um, for learning Hebrew. That's called the um, whoops, I don't find it. A learning benchmark that talks about how children really need to get a grip of language before third grade in order for them not to feel like they are behind or not included, and that after third grade it's harder to catch up because obviously children learning languages before the age of 9 is really, really easy for them.
Right.
And so in the many small and medium communities today, they do have Sunday schools of various types. And a lot of them are really well organized and really maximize the resources they have. But it's difficult because the children are not getting literacy, and the staff locally available aren't able to teach that. They're not professional teachers. They don't use a methodology. Very, very classic, simple educational, principles. No great brain surgery here, though I have to say that, I didn't come from this background. I always say I would have been the last person in high school to be voted like a high school principal, like the last, really, like mamash. And so, it's shocking to me that I'm the one bringing, trying to think of using these classic principles just to bring a really good solution to the marketplace and fills the need, for children to have literacy, which obviously opens their opportunities as they go on in life.
Exactly. And also there's this whole, problem of having local schools and not having, a way to bring kids from different countries, which you solved with doing the school online, because the Sunday schools are in-person schools, right? They're local schools where only the people from your local city can go, whereas you started this school online. So when you started in 2015, you started with 6 kids. You had 6 kids in the school. You were doing everything, I'm guessing, because it was your idea, your project, and you started everything. And where are you?
Well, really,
tell us.
Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, really. No, I was asking you where you are today.
So, it really didn't start as a school. It just started as like schooling for my children. And then friends said, why don't we do it together? And then, cost wise, it's more cost effective because we're sharing costs. And then they could do twice a week instead of once a week at the same budget. And today we're almost at 100 students from 16 countries, mostly learning together in small groups with highly professional teachers, highly professional programs. And all of our children are literate by 2nd grade. So that's good.
Wow. And also today you've been promoted chairwoman of the organization, which means that you have a principal, you have someone that takes care of the admin, someone who takes care of the organization of the school. So you've been doing that all by yourself for a long time until you decided, that's it, it's not me. I'm going to delegate this to someone who is going to become the principal of the school. So I'm going to take this opportunity to talk about how we met, you and I, how we started our friendship and our collaboration, and how you worked with me and you came into my program, the Born to Do Business program. And when we started working together, you still were doing a lot of the things in the school, and you also had your marketing consulting business on the side. Can you tell us, how did you go from having those 2 part-time, let's say part-time activities, to having now a principal of the school, having found fundraising for your school, being the chairwoman of your school, and getting to 100 kids and 16 countries? Can you tell us a little bit about that journey of how did this happen?
So I still have my marketing consultancy. I would say it probably takes up like 30% of my time. I try to be very organized. I have more than one calendar. Yes, we brought a menahelet, a principal, on at the beginning of the school year. It was really, really important to me to be able to show parents that we're super professional, that someone is supervising the teachers, is watching their progress, is making sure that children are regularly assessed in order to make sure that we're on the right track. Teachers that give out homework and recordings of the classes if they miss them. So that obviously is a lot to manage when you get to 100 children. And so, I'm juggling right now. It's a bit of a juggle. It seems, however hard I try to be organized, it doesn't always work, but I do try. Sundays is a big school day. I do a lot of work for school on Sundays.
But you spoke to me more about the mindset. You said that, you know, before we started working together, you knew what was mindset, but you didn't know what was the power of mindset. And then
I did not know what was mindset.
You didn't know what was mindset.
Did not.
Okay, even better. And then you actually, you know, you said that mindset really helped you to move from that place of you doing everything to a place where you hired people to do things for you and be more professional. So can you describe this process of how did you discover, you know, what was it to discover what mindset is, and how do you explain that it helped you go from one step to the next?
So discovering mindset was quite mind-blowing because, again, I didn't come from an education background. I was never a teacher. I never wanted to be a teacher. Like when I did my national service, I looked for any job that wasn't a teacher. Really. So it was quite slow in the beginning, and mindset really helped propel me to understand that the only way to expand was to build, and the only way to get from, you know, one step to another step was to expand. And that meant that it, you know, it wasn't just going to be about me. I also recognized quite early on that I was happy to, you know, even though I did the work for several years, that I was happy to manage it, to fundraise for it, to market for it. But I really didn't want to deal with the bits and bytes of what it meant to run a school or a professional school. And so mindset was very integral in bringing me to that understanding that I needed to build it well and carefully and professionally. And, you know, that was the way really to grow big. My dearest aspiration is that we'll be the biggest school in Europe in 3 years.
Wow. And mindset is what's gonna, so maybe for people that are listening and might not be very familiar with what is mindset, can you give your definition of mindset, and can you give us an example of how you shifted your mindset that helped you see bigger?
I think when you're in something and you're not really sure how to make it work, mindset is what propels you to a place where you can more clearly see the steps that you need to take in order to get to your vision. And without that, sometimes it's very difficult to grow. You're kind of limited, right? Mindset kind of blows everything open, where you think, you know, if I can do A, why can't I do B and C, and therefore do D and E? And all of a sudden you're experimenting to see, you know, which way things should go. But without shifting your mindset, that would be impossible. Does that make sense?
Yep, it makes sense. At least for me. I hope it makes sense for the people that are listening. But I remember that while we were working together, there was a topic that kept on coming back while you were debating between, should I put my focus on the marketing consulting? Should I put my focus on the school? And there was this thing where the school was supposed to be something on the side, and the marketing consulting was supposed to be your main business. And I think that there was a lot of mindset shift here when you realized that if the school was knocking on the door, and it was, because you had a lot of success, you were able to raise some funds, you were able to bring the kids, so doors were opening for you with the school, and the marketing consulting business was all of a sudden less aligned. It was successful, but it was less aligned. And I've seen this shift from you, you know, going from the school is something on the side to, you know what, if this is working, if this is tracking, there's, you know, traction and there is momentum, and this is maybe where I should be. So did you see that transformation? Did you see that evolution from, you know, what you thought in the beginning to where you are today?
Well, I think you can see that
Yeah.
after 12 months of working with you. Yeah. It also made me think, you know, I still very clearly have a vision of myself as being a businesswoman and a philanthropist. And I felt that I had sort of fulfilled my vision of being a philanthropist, but not so much my vision of being in business. But it has made me rethink about what kind of business I would want to be active in. Certainly, I have discovered that believing in education as a way to support human growth is definitely something that's very, very dear to my heart. for people to be able to live a better life. And so I'm still mulling over it, and I've put it on the side for the moment because we have a lot going on with our family. We're about to move home. We're at the onboarding phase for the new school year, so it's a very intense time. I have to take several trips to several conferences, and my kids are going on summer holidays, and I'd like to spend some time with them. So I've actually put it on the side at the moment, but I believe that it's a process, and it will come.
For sure.
I do believe that.
For sure. No, I think it's very interesting to see, because I've seen this in with many people that think that the thing that's on the side at the end becomes the main thing, right? Because it's the thing that is basically coming from the heart, the thing that is coming from what you really believe, that is aligned with what I call you're born to do. So, so very often this is what happens when you know how to listen to yourself, and when you know how to shift your mindset. Let me ask you something. You like you said, you mentioned I've
definitely been nudged in that direction. There's no question about it.
Yeah, that's what I mean by the doors are opening.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you were in the program for 12 months, that we've been working for 12 months together. Can you pinpoint the thing that you received or you got from the program or from our work together that helped you through that process, through that transformation?
I think that discovering mindset was so radical for me. Really so radical for me. I was not aware of its existence. So for me, mindset was a very, very big part of the program and a very big part of the discovery for me. There were a lot of elements of different ways of doing marketing, different ways of building systems. There were a lot of elements that I was very familiar with, obviously, because of my own marketing consultancy. But I hadn't quite seen it put together in that way. And so there was something about the program that kind of aligned everything for me and put it all together. And I thought that was really, really nice. Meaning, even though I recognized and I was familiar with so many of the elements, I still hadn't quite figured out always how to make things move together.
Right. And so that was helpful for you.
Very critical to my growth. I don't think I would be the same person if I hadn't have done the program. Very critical. I'm not the same person anymore. I don't think in the same way.
Right. And you mentioned systems. You mentioned marketing. You mentioned systems. And I know that you were familiar with systems, like you said, in your marketing consultancy, you were using systems. But I remember that at some point, systems was what helped you really be able to organize the school and to structure it in a way that you could really delegate to the people that were working for you. Can you tell us more about how did you go from, I know what systems are, to implementing the systems really like in the school?
Well, we're a not-for-profit. So just as an example, I'll very often talk to people either fundraising consultants, or even with Misrad Hatfutzot, the Ministry of the Diaspora in Israel. And I'll say things like, I'm just going to consult my CRM, or I'm just going to check what my history is with that person. And they sort of look at me like, wow, she has a CRM. She has a CRM and she knows what to do with it. I think that because so much of specifically what we do is so experimental, teaching young children literacy as a legitimate way of, doing the education tool is still so experimental that for me, putting my best foot forward and not always being able to speak directly, personally, physically to a human being meant that we really had to find a way to put our best foot forward in a digital way. And that was our way of communicating to the parents that we're serious, that we're organized, that we support them, that we're trying to make things simple and easy for them. And so the tools that I've implemented in the school have really, really helped us to do that. Not to mention the fact we have a distributed workforce. And I know there are companies today that have distributed workforce, and I'm all over the literature about how they work and what they do. And if they're being successful or not so successful. You know, post-COVID, there's a lot of conversation about, you know, are companies really nice places to be? Are they just telling stories, or are they actually really following through on how much they care, right?
Right.
And do, you know, Simon Sinek has just put out a video on that
Yes.
about whether or not, you know, right? Have you seen that?
Yeah, yes,
So,
I've seen it. Yeah.
and it really made me think about, you know, what it means to communicate in a digital way. You know, I can take this really very, very far, but I'm not sure if you want me to. You know, when I think about all sorts of companies, when I think today even about my children's school, I feel like it's such a one-sided relationship. You know, they can talk to us, but we can't talk to them. They send us messages on Google Classroom, but there's no phone number for us. We have to send an email, and we're lucky if we get an answer. I think the world has really gone that way, you know, in terms of commerce and customer service on the most basic level, but also in terms of distributed workforces. Like having a distributed workforce today, that's a skill. And you can't just go from being a face-to-face, in-presence workforce to a digital workforce without making a lot of changes and being really careful about how you communicate. And so we are really working hard on trying to experiment and to see how we can implement the best type of the best work for you know, distributed workforce. And even though we're a small distributed workforce at this stage, you know, we have 4 people in the Hanhala, we have 8 teachers. I think that's going to grow, and the communication is so important to the end result of what the work looks like, what the kids' education looks like, what the relationship with the families look like. And that's something we're working really hard on. And it's a good question, because most people don't even think about those things when they think about this organization that I'm running. And I'm sure it's true of companies as well.
For sure, for sure. And I think that what's really interesting is that, you know, we usually think as nonprofit as people that do good, and, you know, of course they, you know, they have a cause, but we don't really think about them as, you know, organized in a professional way, as companies, as business, with tools, with CRMs, with systems, with being more professional. And I think that what you're showing here is that it's possible. You're showing that you can have a non-for-profit, and you can have, you know, all the good that you do in the world, and the cause, and the fundraising and everything. But you're also, it doesn't mean that you're not actually also supposed to put together the systems and the tools and use the tools
Right.
that people in the business world are using to improve. And I know that, I mean, everyone knows that during the corona, there was a lot of conversation on how do we make this relationship with this communication, even though it's virtual, it's online, but how do we make it more human? How do we make it more warm? How do we make it more connected, right? And there's been a lot of work, and that, you know, I'm sure that this is still, you know, in progress, and we're still going to discover. But
we're still in it. Yeah, we're still in it completely. Yeah, we're still in it. You know, how to collaborate on a project. What happens if you're working on a project and you've got 3 different people working on the same project, each responsible for different elements? What does that look like?
Right.
How do we make sure that everybody's delivering on time? How do we make sure that we're all in the loop? Because each one needs to know what the other one is doing, and we're never actually sitting in the same room together. It's a lot harder than you can imagine, but it's critical to the results of what you're doing. And for us, very, very much about building a relationship of trust with those parents, and for them to feel like we are serving them, really serving them.
And what I think also is really interesting in the way you put this experience, you speak about this experience, is that you're talking about 16 countries. You're talking about different cultures. You're talking about different, probably, time zones. You're talking about people that would have no way to know each other or to be in touch with each other if not for the school. And the invisible thread that is connecting them is actually their Jewishness and the school. Right. And so the school is like bringing together, you know, this invisible thread, and this is what they have in common. They're Jewish, they have kids, they want a Jewish education, they live in Europe, and we were talking about, just before we went on, how there is a movement now, there's a trend of Jews in Europe that want to rebuild the communities, the Jewish communities in Europe. So, and I was just thinking, well, you were, you said that you started in 2015. That was 5 years before Corona, which means that you were already online and you were already using tools like Zoom and having this, online, more global European approach even before people discovered it through through Zoom when Corona hit. So did you see a change actually before and after Corona? Did you see people
very much so? Yes. Very much so. We doubled over Corona. Corona legitimized us as being a serious organization. I think nobody felt before Corona that online could be a substitute for real learning. Can you hear me? Because there's a little bit of a delay.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a delay. We heard what you said. Yeah, that before Corona,
I think
there was no way.
I think that there's yeah, we definitely were legitimized. Sorry. I think online learning became legitimized over Corona. I don't think anyone thought that, serious learning could be done on Zoom. And we knew it could, but we were kind of talking into deaf ears. And I think that once Corona hit and everybody was doing online learning, then we kind of distinguished ourselves into, the not so great version of online learning and the really, really amazing version of online learning. And we've been, trying to stay ahead of the curve.
Right.
We constantly train our teachers in new ways of teaching, of new ways of engaging, of new ways to make things interactive. And I think, in a lot of schools today, even training their own teachers is something that's become really difficult. There are not so many, there are not so many funds available. People don't have time. Everyone's overwhelmed. And I think that what we've shown here is a really good model of education that pays for itself. And still have money to do things in a proper way without having to worry about buildings and electrics and all the rest of it, which I think is as a business model, it's very interesting.
Very
the fact that you can reinvent something. Yeah.
Very, very interesting. And the fact that you, even though you're raising funds and you're a non-for-profit, but you're still thinking in terms of investment and in terms of return on investment, you're still thinking like a business. You're still thinking as,
Yeah, we have a 3-year plan, which we're calling the scaling stage. Our 3-year plan we're in our first year of our 3-year plan, which is a scaling stage. And we believe that when this stage is over, we will be self-sufficient, which I think is remarkable for a Jewish school anywhere on the planet.
That's true.
Jewish schools are known to be organizations that really do need a lot of resources and certainly need a lot of money. And I think the idea that Jewish education could be something self-sustaining is revolutionary in itself.
It is.
Gosh, you're making me say all these things that I think, wow, this is so amazing.
It is amazing. But then why do you think I wanted to interview you? It's because it is amazing. It is definitely amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's amazing. And
it's miraculous.
And I also think that by you having this strategic decision, I mean, it was a reality decision to do it online because you wanted to reach all the kids, in Europe. But I think the strategic decision of bringing the school online has also enabled you to say, okay, we're going to get the money, but it's not going to go in the building. It's not going to go in the class. It's not going to go in the desk. It's not going to go in the board.
Correct.
It's going to go into better teachers, better interaction, better tools. And I think that this also teaches, I think there's a lot of lesson to be learned for all the people that are still investing in, in the buildings or in the physical, physical things. Wow.
I'm not here to say that there is no value in physical. When I talk to Jewish communities and I say, how can we help you? And they say, well, in our community, we meet once a week, but we don't offer any literacy. And I say, well, can we do the literacy part and you do the physical part? That's a dream combination, right?
Right.
I can't say that either of the solutions are perfect. Obviously having everything physically available, but not having a professional teacher or professional program is obviously going to be different. And I can offer the professional teacher and the professional program, but I'm not close. I probably should share a picture, but I'm not sure if I can share a picture here. Wonderful photographs that some students sent to us of recent lesson on Yom Ha'atzmaut where they bake cookies in the class, right?
Wow. Wow. Amazing.
And it's really very beautiful to see, you know, happy faces with, you know, flag of Israel cookies. And you're thinking, wow, that's the coolest thing ever. Who was that teacher?
Yeah, exactly. That's amazing. Wow.
Yeah.
So we're getting to the end of this interview, Tali. I think that this is only the beginning. Like you said, you're only in the beginning of your journey, and we're going to hear so much more about you and about the hundreds of kids that you're going to touch and to teach in Europe. So there's a lot to be proud of. I know when I see your journey, I can say, you know, wow, this is really an amazing journey. I'm so happy that you went through the program and that we had to work together. And the last question that I wanted to ask you is, thank you. Some people are watching this and they're, you know, wondering like, but how, you know, why would I do such a program? Maybe, you know, Tali could have done it by herself. Maybe it would have happened anyway. And maybe it would, you know, I'm not saying that, but I would say like, if someone, you know, is hesitating with the program, so what would you say to them that, you know, to say like, you know, how could you explain, you know, what it is to work with me or to be in the program? What would you say to recommend the program?
I think we really work with all kinds of children. We work with some small communities. We work with families mostly, and some families that really don't live near a Jewish community. And I think that the main aims of our programming is of course the learning and the literacy. But I think there's a lot to be said for the community that we're building, and for feeling part of the Jewish people, and not just me living in Spain, you know, on a mountaintop. I think that there's a lot of power in the Jewish people. And I think that the idea that we all have a common language is a way for us to become even more connected. And so, yeah, I think that's really, really important. Just to give you an example, it was Holocaust Memorial Day recently. And some of the parents were asking, we have a school chat, and some of the parents were asking about how to talk to their children about the Holocaust. You know, what is the right age to talk about which things, and how do you approach it if you're just starting out? So we put together a like a parent session that's going to be led by one of our parents who actually works in Holocaust education, has been trained by Yad Vashem, and she's going to lead this conversation so we could try figure it out together, how to approach Holocaust education with our children. And I think that this community-led effort, this parenting, you know, these suggestions from parents, you know, makes us so much more than just a school or just teaching literacy, but we're all part of a bigger community where we can share things with each other and help each other. And I think for parents today, gosh, that's got to be one of the most important things.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. And so when I asked my question before, I think there was it's funny because I spoke about my program and you answered with the Zehud program.
Oh, I'm sorry. I misunderstood.
Because I love what you
Tell
said.
me again.
I love what you said. I think it's really important that you said that. So I'm very happy that you answered like that. But I was saying, like, if someone wanted to join the Born to Do Business program, what would you say to them to recommend them the program and to say, like, from your experience of what you went through in the journey? What would you say? What would you say to them?
I would say if you have an idea for a business or you're just starting out and you see big, but you're not quite sure what the steps are to get to big, then join Nathalie, because she will hold your hand and take you through so many of the steps that will really get you to the next stage, that you might be wondering you're not really sure how to get to. I know I wasn't. I didn't think I was I mean, look, honestly, this was a not-for-profit idea that I wasn't even sure it was in my personality to do it. But Nathalie definitely showed me the way. And today I feel very confident about, you know, my 3-year plan, which I have put together, and the milestones that are in that plan. I feel quite confident that we're going to achieve them. I have no if you would have asked me to map that out before Nathalie, I would have said to you, I don't even know where to begin. I don't know what to map. I don't know how to dare. I don't know how to put a number on it. Today, it's totally mapped out. We know what track we're on, how many children we're going to have each of these years, how many children we need to become self-sufficient, to that very, very important validation of our model, which I think is super. Nathalie's program opens your mind. And I think sometimes when we have ideas or we're just starting out, like we're in a bit of our own echo chamber and you go round and round and, you say, well, I could try this, I could try that, but you don't really know what's out there. You don't know what the tools are. You don't know what the systems are. And so you need to learn those things in order to be able to say, if I apply that to this, I can see how that will grow. Or if I apply this to that, I could see how that will grow. And I think that's fundamental. I think what I learned at Nathalie has taken me probably beyond what I'm doing now, but I have very clear ideas about how things work. And, and that helps me to sort of move my plan along. So no, I wouldn't be here without Nathalie. No, it was really a very, very eye-opening program for me. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and it really, really built me into who I am today.
Wow, Nathalie, thank you so much. Thank you for being who you are and for doing what you do, because I think it's really important work. And I'm going to put down a note for myself to, be in touch with you in 3 years to have another interview to see where you are and how did the plan go, because I'm sure that
biggest school in Europe. Exactly. Self-sufficient business model.
Exactly. That's what we'll talk about, because that's, you're already on your way for that. And I'm sure that you'll reach that and even more. So I have no doubt that this will be very successful and that you're helping so many families, so many children and parents that need that so much. And I think that this is really amazing. So thank you so much, Nathalie.
I have to say that it's the honor of my life to do this work. And thank you very much for having me today.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Nathalie. And I'm sure that we'll put in the bio, we'll put the link to the school so people can go and visit. And you're welcome to put it also in the comments below the podcast, because I'm sure a lot of people will want to hear more about the school. So thank you, everyone, and see you next week for the next episode of the Jewish Women Entrepreneurs Podcast.